matter how, how established from a mindset as well as from an intelligence standpoint, it's going to be challenging. And kind of face it with a big heart and say that I'm going to conquer every challenge that comes my way. That's a big deal.
Hey guys, welcome back to Keeping It 99. And today we're here with a very special guest, Miss Marianne Maximous. Thank you for taking time out of your day to come on the podcast. Really appreciate it. Episode 5 of the Coptic Life series. So today we're going to be talking about what it's like immigrating to America at a younger age, in high school, because you did that. So my first question for you is, what did you find to be the hardest challenge of moving from Egypt to America?
Sure. So aside from the language, because I went to French schools growing up in Egypt, so I had not learned English, or maybe I have learned very little English before I moved here. So I couldn't speak, right? Don't know much communicating with people, right? It was a bit of a challenge, right? There's a lack of confidence. You're worried that you say something and people are gonna look at you and laugh. So there's that fear. I would say that that's one of the biggest challenges. And then the other thing is to conform to the culture, right? You're coming in from a different cultural, perspective and standpoint. I think Egypt is, in general, even till the day, is still more of a closed society. And you're coming into a society that's a bit far more open, and probably 20-something years ago was probably closer than it is today. But to us, it was. So I would say overcoming these hurdles of how to balance between what you've been raised into versus what you're coming into, and making sure that you don't lose your, what you've learned growing up from a value perspective, but yet learn what's good from the new culture and bring it into your life. And then also, making sure that your parents align with that. Because you do still live with your parents.
Yeah.
You don't just come in here and then live somewhere else.
Yeah, and I think kind of what you said about taking the culture, not keeping your values and your morals, but then conforming to the culture is something that is very difficult. And I think even second generation, third generation, we also struggle with that.
Yes.
Kind of taking what we believe to be true and what we believe to be right and applying that to the world that we live in with this completely diverse and different culture. So how did you kind of navigate kind of taking what you believe in and mixing that with, the world that you live in? Sure.
So I'll give credit to two places that I think embraced me during, this transitional time. First, of course, my parents and our house, right? We are close together as a family. So that is very important. And, having this kind of feeling the security of mom and dad around and my brother, that was very important to me. And the second would be the church. I think I, quickly became involved in the church, just attending Sunday school and then starting to serve at a younger age. And then, being involved in like tasbihah, hymns classes, and making sure that at least, no matter how busy I was every week with school, that at least made time to come to church on Saturday night as well as on Sunday. So those things I would say had been my support during those transitional periods of time. I would say the first 2 to 3 years. And that kind of, put down the foundation for how I was able to navigate my life for the next 22 years.
Yeah, and I think, as you were saying, like that involvement in church is very relevant, like even with people who are, not immigrated, people who grew up. And nowadays we're seeing kind of that involvement decrease among the youth. And it's something that as a Coptic church we need to figure out a solution for, because having youth in the church is vital on many levels. So what is kind of like your advice to youth that, maybe have friends or have people around them that kind of, don't really see church as like for them?
Yeah. So maybe it's a bit different now versus it used to be 20-something years ago. So I cannot, my advice might not be totally applicable, because I think the churches today, thank God, and God bless, are far more crowded than, for instance, when we immigrated to the U.S. When maybe immigrated to the U.S., there was only like 100 families. You still are the newcomer, the newbie, or the new kid on the block, to say, and it takes time for people to build friendship. So, it didn't happen overnight, right? For people to embrace you, it takes even people that are established there. They like to make sure that they get to know you well first before they welcome you and they become your friends. So there's always going to be that. I don't think you're going to eliminate that. What I would say is, the church just needs to embrace anyone who comes in and just find how to connect with them and find the right people that will be able to connect with them. I would say within maybe 6 months to a year, I started having friends, and maybe 1 or 2 that stayed through college, when I was there. Those are the ones that were also, I would say, my support system. So for the church and for the people that are in the church, be open-minded, be welcoming to other people. I think we all tend with our busy lives to go back to our own, little homes or our lives, and forget that there are other people coming in, from whether from Egypt or from even other places, and they perhaps are needing this welcome and someone to say hello to them and make them feel that, they are part of the new family or part of the church.
Yeah, and I think the church now is moving in a direction to people who are like not Orthodox, not Coptic at all, kind of welcoming them. And I think a lot of times we forget that we still have to welcome each other.
Correct.
And I think now it's very hard to, keep both, maintain both.
Yes.
But it's something that's vital and that needs to be done.
Sure.
So coming from Egypt, obviously being a Coptic Egyptian in Egypt is, especially like years ago, is not really the easiest thing to grow up in. So what were kind of like your experiences, and if you don't mind talking about anything you struggled with, just like, what was that like kind of growing up in that environment?
Sure. In Egypt, right?
Yes.
I will not complain, because I think I grew up, aside from living kind of in our own little bubble, it actually, you'll find it amazing that people live here in bubble and people in Egypt also live in bubble. Our own little bubble was the school that I went to, which was, a Catholic school. Everybody was probably from the same family, same mindset to an extent. The church I went to, a lot of it, people that I related to and I knew from my school. So it was, again, a very much bubble. So I would say that I grew up to be so comfortable in my own skin and the people that I deal with. Because who I deal with are people that I see at school, I see at church, and then my family and my extended family. And then, you get to interact with your neighbor every once in a while, but it's not that much. So I would say, I lived this nice little sheltered, life, I would say, coming up and growing up. What helped me, I would say, kind of adapt and again, grow as a person, I would say back it's a church. And the church that I went to, I'm not saying that every church in Egypt is that way. I went to a little church. It was, again, very small, church in downtown Cairo. It used to be called St. Mary, downtown Cairo. And now it's called St. Mary and St. Paul. No, St. John, sorry, the Baptist, I forgot. And it was, the servants were wonderful. I actually still stay in touch with my servants from Sunday school. And you will laugh, but I do remember there were times where I would be the only person sitting in Sunday school. And all my friends who were, at the time we were middle school, kind of going into high school, and they were my friends from school as well. They wouldn't come. So this whole thing about, kids not wanting to attend Sunday school, it's been there from a really long time ago. This is not a new thing today. So what I'm trying to say from that is people who want to come to church are always going to be, it's your own interest, right? No one is going to force you. There's going to be people, there are going to be the servants that come in and try to invite you and try to bring you over. And they're doing their job, right? Because they have that guilt feeling inside of them saying, oh, if I don't do that, that's like, I'm not doing my part in front of the Lord. But at the end of the day, it's your own interest to wanting. Because if you don't want to go, no matter how many people are going to invite you, even when you go, your mind is going to be elsewhere. So I don't want to say that I'm different than others and it's me, but that was me. There are a lot of my friends that maybe didn't have that interest, and that's their own interest. That's just what they their own choice. It's not, I wouldn't say Marianne is better than, Miranda. Marianne had her own choice of life, and Miranda had her own choice of life.
Yeah, and I think as well, like, that's very applicable now. It's like, it's people who want to go will go, people who don't want to go. There's nothing you can do to force them to go. You're not going to drag them.
And we shouldn't judge, right? Because there are ones that are saved to, at the end. And not everyone who does, go to church and say, Lord, Lord, is the one who gets saved, right? You got to it's back to your heart. So I know that we get so much focused on everyone coming to church, and it's very important. I'm not saying that we should go away. But I think what's important is it's our choice. We want to do it because it's for our own willingness to, get closer to the Lord, to serve, to help other people, and to have that sense of community.
And I also think within church there's obviously there's a lot of levels of spirituality, and there's different, I wouldn't want to say tasks, but there's different things that people do based on what level of spirituality they're most comfortable with. And I think a lot of times it's hard for you to look at the next level, look at where you want to be spiritually, and make that choice to kind of take that next step and kind of go, especially at someone who's my age, kind of going into college. There's a lot of changes in life, and one of those things is you kind of realize in perspective what you are, in perspective to everything around you, and you kind of really put it as together as a puzzle. So how would you kind of make that next step? What would you kind of tell someone who's kind of struggling to take that next step in the spiritual life?
Sure. First advice, time management. You're going to have to sit down and allocate time for everything. Otherwise, you're just going to live your life as spontaneous as it would be. Okay? I think I mentioned it earlier. Even though I was super busy at school, and you're going to see that for yourself. It's going to be tough. It's not going to be easy, and there's going to be a lot of work. But you're going to have to say, well, I've got this time on Sunday morning. I've got to go to liturgy. You have to serve afterwards for Sunday school or attend Sunday school, I got to allocate that time. And you just book that. That's almost as you've got classes that you have to go attend. No option. And I think you and or anyone else who's listening, you got to make sure that at bare minimum, the only time you miss it is if you're extremely sick or something is coming up, like you've got a design project that is due and you've been working on it, and you discover something last minute and you have to get it done because that's the only time before you submit. But keep it to worst case scenario when you have to miss. And I think you will feel the difference, how that contributes to your persistence. And also, it's almost like, if you have a lamp, right? You need to keep the oil running for that little light to stay on. So church is the same way. That's what kind of feeds us that oil to keep the light. If we don't do it, and if you miss one, then because I'm busy. And then you come the next Sunday, I can't attend it because I'm busy. And then you keep on going into the habit that you're not attending anymore. Guess what? That has become something that you're not used to. And you're very much aware, you hear it everywhere on just regular social media or other platforms, that a habit is well formed within 21 days. You can actually build a habit in 21 days and stick to it, or you can destroy a habit in 21 days and let go of it. So your persistence and you pushing yourself to attend the liturgy, to get the blessings, to listen in to the word, that will keep you going.
I agree, and I think as well, when it comes to continuing in the faith and pushing yourself, I see it as there's no plateauing. There's no such thing as being constant in faith. It's either always going up or going down, and I feel like it's important to realize, because there are times where it will go down. Inevitably, there are times where you will feel like things aren't going right spiritually and in general in the world or in life. So I think it's always important to kind of realize there's an up and there's a down. But over time, we should always be looking for
The average.
Yeah, you're always looking to,
Yes.
put more effort and to continue to push and more and more for God and for Christ. So
Yeah.
how do you kind of balance that, moving to America, going to college in America? How do you kind of balance that, pushing spiritually, whereas, you got a lot of school stuff as well?
Sure. So first thing is know that your help and support comes from God. Okay. So, which says that, maintaining humility, because it's really important. The minute that you feel that you got pride in your heart and it's all about you, and I'm doing really well, and even I'm balancing well between church and school and all my other extracurricular, and it's all because I am very much a strong person. I'm super smart. I think that's when very quickly that this is the almost the first step to a pitfall, or you unfortunately start kind of slacking off. So I think keeping humility and knowing that the Lord is always going to be the source of your success. And even sometimes if he allows you to fail at times or even dip down, whether in spiritual life or in school life, there is a reason, because you're going to learn out of it. The second thing I would say, perseverance and positivity is very important. So even if, let's go back to the example that I mentioned, right? You missed Sunday for one Sunday because unfortunately situation were outside of your hand. Then you missed another one. And then you're like, okay, well, I just missed two. Might as well miss the third one. So you gotta have to have that positivity, and you have to say, no, you know what? That's fine. Some circumstances that was outside of my control. I'm gonna move on and get back up to, what I'm doing. And then perseverance, right? So just knowing that life is gonna be hard, no matter how well you are, or no matter how, how established from a mindset as well as from an intelligence standpoint, it's going to be challenging. And kind of face it with a big heart and say that I'm going to conquer every challenge that comes my way. That's a big deal.
And I think, when it comes to those challenges, a lot of them are very internal. A lot of times, as being Christian in general in the world we live in, we always think that people will look at us negatively, especially the direction that the world's going in, because of our faith and because of what we believe. But I mean, from my own personal experience of having this podcast and talking about it all the time, is that that's not really true. People respect it.
Yeah.
And people respect the fact that you're upfront about it. And I think
exactly.
That's, one of the most important things we can do is be honest about who we are and what we believe in. There's
nothing for us to be ashamed of. Being, proud of our faith and and persevering our faith, that's who we are. That's part of our DNA.
Hey guys, before we continue with the video, just wanted to put a quick word. As part of this Coptic Life series, we've partnered up with an organization called Open Arms for Africa, and it's a nonprofit and it does a lot of cool things. Go check out their website. So make sure to check that out. Link in the description, and enjoy the rest of the episode.
So I think, we shouldn't be ashamed of who we are. I know we are different sometimes, even even within our faith and other denomination within our, Christian faith, we tend to be the one that spend the most time during Holy Week at church than anybody else. But you know what? I'm actually very proud when I say that, we're going to church. This is like one of the most important, weeks of our year. And I've, dedicated since I was a younger person that I take those 2 days off and I have to go, attend to the traditions that we grew up in, and people respect that.
Yeah, and I think when it comes specifically to the Coptic Church is that, there are so many things that we do that are so ancient and are so set in stone. And if we move away from those things, it's almost like we lose part of ourselves. I think as an individual, if I, stop going to church a little bit, or if I have things come up, if I'm traveling and I'm not really going to church as much, I almost feel like I'm missing something.
Yes, exactly.
like recently I was, over spring break, I was in England for a school trip. And this is like the week before Holy Week. So there's like a lot of like emotion and a lot of spirituality that goes with those 50 days of fasting. And to go the last week without going to church at all, you really realize like how much God does play a role in your life if you let him play a role in your life. And I think that as Coptic Orthodox Christians, we always, especially living in America and the culture we are, it's like an I culture. It's a me culture.
Believe me, it's everywhere now. It's not just the U.S.
Yeah. And it's like, it's sad because that's not what life is. Life is all about community, all about family. And that's how God created us. He created man and woman to be, a family and to create and to, live a life together with him in the middle. So not having God in the middle of your life, I feel like kind of leads to a lot of those problems and leads to a lot of those feelings of despair, depression, and all the things that we see in the world today. So how would you kind of explain to younger people the importance of God in your life?
It's hard to explain because you have to feel it, right? And one person's experience does not mean it's somebody else. Somebody else is going to go through the same thing. All what I can say is the feeling of having the Lord in your life is a different feeling. You just feel this, that anytime you're upset, there is someone who's, feeling you and who's kind of like comforting you and who goes through what you go through. You've got your family, and please, I'm not discounting that, my husband, my children, or my parents would also feel the same way. But I think in my heart, sometimes, there are situations, even no matter how I explain it to them, whether it's a challenge that I'm facing at work or another situation in life, no one will feel you as much as the Lord does. So it's almost like he's, and I don't want to call it my soulmate, but he is the one that knows who I am too, right? People sometimes can think that you're talking a certain way or, this is just all superficiality and who you are from the outside to just impress. But the Lord knows who you truly are, whether you're putting in a mask on or not a mask on. And someone to know you as much as how our Lord knows us, that's, to me, that's more than a friend, more than a spouse, more than a parent. So again, I don't know how to explain it because it's something that I feel in my heart, and I hope that it stays this way all the way until my last breath, because, this is whom I also want to live for until, I leave this world.
I agree, and I think that a lot of times we're always in this cycle of, not really. Sometimes we get stuck in this cycle where we don't really feel God and we kind of just go through the motions.
Yes.
Especially, I can say personally, I've definitely felt this, where it's just like I show up to church, you pray, read the Bible, but there's nothing that you really feel being with God. And I think you almost have to let that happen. You
do. So you have to. There are going to be times when you don't feel it, but what you do is you make sure that you stay, if you have your own prayer time every day or your quiet time every day, that you continue to do that. Because that's when you have those very strong moments that you feel. And, even if you're tired or you can't even open your eyes, but you have this 5 minutes of just letting you, close your eyes and just thinking about the Lord, contemplating on a verse or something that you've read. That's a moment of kind of silence and connecting with the Lord. So even sometimes if you don't feel it and life is just making you super busy, try to force even 5 minutes to feel that way.
And that consistency will build,
Yes.
that connection with God.
Oh yeah, I can tell you the days that I don't have my quick, 20 or 30 minutes in the morning before I leave to go to work, usually I know myself, I'm kind of like irritated the whole day. And it's almost that 20 to 30 minutes give me some calmness and get me prepared for what I will see that day, in the world, what challenges I will face, what troubles I will see from people, or problems I run into. So having that, it's almost like, working out, right? To kind of condition your muscle before running a marathon, you train. You can't just go in, cold run and say that I'm going to run it, right? So that's the same way. To get yourself to feel that way, you have to train yourself to give some time every day to the Lord. And the world we live in today, they call it meditation, FYI, because, that's how it's being called, but it's through you connecting with the Lord.
And the church teaches that through the liturgical cycle. We prepare for liturgy with matins, with praises, with vespers. We have a preparation for the preparation. We prepare for Holy Week with 50 days of fasting. We prepare. So it's always, keeping your mind on what's the end, always having the end in mind.
Yes.
Always having Christ, that judgment day in your mind and thinking about it. And that, I feel, will kind of guide you into the right path and guide you in the right direction. It's very important to always have that reminder before us. And by consistently praying, consistently reading the Bible, there's no way you're going to miss that message. And I think a lot of times, especially for me, it's you want to wake up one morning, pray, and it'll be over. You just want solutions like that, but that's not how God works. I mean, God waited from Adam until Christ that entire time, just for that. So, if God does it that way, then we can't.
Yeah. But don't be discouraged too. Sometimes when you're having that 20 or 30 minutes in the morning, very quickly you're just feeling like you're doing what's due to be done, because that's good. You didn't miss it, right? You got it done, and maybe it wasn't as spiritual as you would like it to be, but at least you made the effort and you forced yourself to do it.
And the church also teaches that, I think, when it comes to communion, because a lot of times people feel like they're unworthy of going to take communion.
Correct.
And we have confession, we have all these things that make you prepared for communion, but
correct.
That you can ask any church father, they will never tell you to not take communion because you feel unworthy.
Yeah, we're all going to be unworthy. Right?
Exactly.
But
we pray countless
it's also
times.
a trick from the evil one, just to make you get further and further away.
Yeah, and so I think, in order to really experience God, it comes down to, in my opinion, two things: humility and consistency. Yeah. Because if you're not humble, then you put yourself above God, then it doesn't make sense.
It's true.
And then if you can't, we have relationships on earth, and you're consistent with those relationships. If you want to have a friendship with someone, you have to talk to them, every so often or every day, depending on how deep your connection is with them.
Exactly. And if you don't talk to them, that's it, right?
Exactly.
The relationship goes cold.
Exactly. So the only way you can connect with God is if you talk to him every week. In the last podcast, the guest said, because I'm going to college and I won't be living at home. It's what would your mom rather, if you called her every single day, or if you went home every single Sunday with flowers and whatever? It's she would rather you call her every single day than do a big thing one time a week and then disappear again.
Correct. I agree.
And so
that's
God is the same way.
I like that analogy. Very strong. Good. So for the ones starting college, make sure at least if you don't want to talk to your mom every day, just text her that you're okay.
All right. Well, thank you very much for taking time out of your day.
You're welcome, Isaac.
Really appreciate it. And thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn on post notifications, and see you guys next week. Thank you.
Thank you.